Let's move on to the third question here, and we'll finish up with this one for today. That why think in terms of scientific inference? Why would a materialist, if they really believe that the world operates under, there's no personal control over the universe by us or any other entity, and it's physics, why, and it's chance and brought into the current condition as a product of chaos, why would scientific inference be valid? In other words, any study or science tries to describe, explain, and predict. Prediction's the hardest one, okay? And you're not always right, and you try to reconfigure your thoughts and try to put it back together in something that's more accurate, and that's okay. But the idea of inference assumes that things are orderly and uniform enough, and that past situations will be like present situations, and that present situations will be like future situations, and that process is enough that you can make generalized inferences or predictions about the nature of the future. For example, if you build a group of people build a rocket to go to the moon, they use calculations, tests, all kinds of things, engineering stuff over time. But they're expecting all their calculations in the past to still be valid in the present and in the future when they actually take off the rocket. If the world really operated by random chance and chaos, then what expectation would we have that 2 + 2 is 4 is still true today or tomorrow, right? There's no reason to expect that, because the very definition of chaos and materialism would lead to unpredictability, improbability. You wouldn't be able to learn anything. You wouldn't be able to know anything, because all knowledge presupposes uniformity, meaning situations happen and we assume that the present will continue to be like how the past was, not perfectly, and that the future will continue to be like the past was. So that similar situations, we can put them together and say, okay, when I did this math problem yesterday, it's still the same principles and controls of when I do this math problem today. And so the same factors are still there for me to be able to do it. But that's only true if the present resembles the past, and if the future, which none of us have experienced, will resemble the present and the past. And so, but if you don't have inference, science becomes impossible. But in a materialist worldview, you'd have no reason to have inference. You'd have no reason to try to make any meaningful prediction about the future, because each event is random and unique. You can't connect them together, and you can't presuppose that there's a uniformity or control guiding any of this stuff. So therefore, there's no reason to expect that, would you trust getting into a rocket to go to the moon if the calculations may not hold from previous, we've done a lot of previous calculations, but they may not be true today, right? So it doesn't work. So the uniformity principle makes science possible, makes human thought, language possible, because we connect like situations. It assumes that what is true in the past, 2 + 2 is 4, law of gravity, scientific experimentation and results, will continue to be true in the present and will generally tend to be true in the future. And this reality of the world allows us to think in a way that's meaningful and then make, there's this blank here, make inferences. Okay, you can only make inferences in a world that's orderly, predictable, and stable to a certain amount, limitedly. An inference is a conclusion or educated guess drawn from observations, as well as previous knowledge or a conclusion reached through observation and reasoning. But reasoning, why be rational? And then why would you, in a chance universe, predict anything to continue to stay the same? right? Human thought would become impossible. So humans can and do use inferences all the time. When you got in the car this morning, you expected that it would continue to work the same way that it's worked before. Now, there could be problems and things, so it's not perfect. But inferences make rational and scientific thought possible. Let me give you an example here. There's a blank at the end of this paragraph. Thinking in terms of scientific inference, I gave you my rocket example, makes something like building a rocket to go to the moon possible. Those engaging in that type of project must assume that their previous calculations and assumptions are still valid and will continue to be valid into the future, right? Though through inference, or though inference doesn't guarantee a result, you can't guarantee because past calculations are true that the astronauts will get safely to the moon. It allows for thinking in terms of probability. So a lot of times people, non-Christians, will say, well, the miracles, it's just so improbable. The resurrection, God creating the world, it's improbable. But what they don't understand is that it's only the biblical worldview where God is the creator and sustainer of the universe in an orderly way and allows us to connect facts and connect events and see the connection between cause and effect and have general stability of the present continues to resemble the past and the future will continue to resemble the present. It's only in that biblical worldview where God maintains that stability where you can have an idea of this will probably happen or that will probably not happen. If things are guided by chance and chaos and are truly random, you don't know when you drive your car if it's going to go. You don't know that if it's really true. Like I gave you the example, the bread that I eat today may be poisonous to me tomorrow. I could never learn or know anything. I could never think an inference. So when people say things like, well, the resurrection is improbable, it's that they are not understanding that what makes the criteria of knowing that something's probable, improbable, probably going to happen, not going to happen, like calculations of a rocket going to the moon, it's only the biblical worldview. So basically you have to assume the biblical worldview, and then once you do that, God created the world, therefore resurrection from the dead is not, it's a miracle, it's supernatural, it's amazing, but it's not, something that you can discount on the basis of, well, it's very improbable. But the materialist has no reason to think in terms of this will probably happen or probably not happen, because how would they know? Based on what? Based on the past? Well, the past is random. Based on the present is random. But they know that that's not true, and they can't. Nobody can live like that. And some may object that it must be the character of the material world to be uniform. Okay, matter just must be uniform and orderly, and therefore it just produces these results, and therefore we can do science and things like that. But that's unargued philosophical bias. That's basically assuming, okay, well, matter just must be that way. These marbles, they're just orderly. Because they're made of matter, they are orderly and stable in a way that allows us to do science. But the worldview of materialism is that everything is in change, in flux, and we know that matter changes. Because it doesn't exist forever. We know that matter changes. It can change forms. We know that things can decay and grow and be broken down and all sorts of different things. So just to say, well, matter must just be that way, isn't true. It's basing something off of an unargued philosophical bias that has no reason to believe that. So in a world solely that's a product of physics, biology, and chemistry in motion, ruled by random chance and chaos, scientific inference would be unwarranted, meaning there'd be no good reason to think about it, and even if it was warranted, it'd be impossible. You could not make predictions because anything you try to describe and explain is a new situation that's always variable, changing, and you can't pin it down.